Well, nice to see you all again. I will not cough to prove that I have corona, but it is true. Welcome everybody for another Hot Politics Lab. I'm happy that we seem to have a full room, both online and in Amsterdam. It's great to see everybody. Today we have two speakers, two PhD students who have been or are visiting our Hot Politics Lab. First is Emma Turkenburg, who is a PhD student at KU Leuven. Emma has done extensive work on incivility, has published some really interesting content analysis, has done some really nice survey work on this, and some testing some of the experimental effects, and has been a visitor of the Hot Politics Lab since September. And it's really nice, Emma, that you will be able to stay with us for the whole calendar year, and hopefully also leading to a successfully submitted dissertation by somewhere after this summer. So that's great. Today you're going to present some work on the affective responses to incivility, a project that I think has a lot of potential, but I'm a little biased. So Emma, the floor is yours, and it's also want to publicly say that it's great that you've been visiting us. You're a great contribution to our research environment, both as a scholar and as a person. So I'm really happy that you get to stay with us for the whole year, and I look forward to your presentation.
Well, thank you so much for this introduction. It's also great that you really read my progress report last week, very in-depthly, judging by all you knew. So I share my screen here, and perfect. Let's see if that works.
If you want your face in the recording, you can also turn on your camera.
Not necessary. Let's see. It says to me that I'm sheets.
Yeah, I can also see it on mine.
I see it on mine as well.
I think your laptop is a problem.
I'm sorry. So what can I do?
I don't know. Not much. Can you stop it and share it again?
Yeah, of course. You do something.
Yeah, I think your Zoom is frozen again.
Okay.
Does it work if I send your presentation to you?
No.
Probably not, right?
I think.
You are recording a mine.
Now you stopped it again?
Yeah, I stopped.
All right. Start it again.
Yes.
But it's just a mouse moving. Yeah, something is wrong with your Zoom because you only see a mouse. Anyway, let's keep the login in yours. Share the screen for the sake of the monitoring. Right.
Let's try again. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this works, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, hi, also online. Let me start with always happens this. It's really nice that today I can present something to you, which is really a work in progress. It's like a first design of something I've been working on with Bert and with Maaike. We're also here. And it's about incivility indeed. So if you think about political incivility, especially politicians' incivility, this guy obviously comes to mind immediately. But we've been seeing this in other places as well. So this is an example from Belgium, where my university, my home university is based, about a minister calling someone from the opposition sabotage Sami. His name is Sami Mehdi, I think. Another one, Bart de Wever, is a prominent Belgian politician calling another party a rubbish party, basically. Macron used some bad words last year, and then the opposition got really mad about that and called him a little dictator, which is a bit uncivil on their part as well. And also here in the Netherlands, so calling someone a climate psychopath or someone's Putin's company poodle, I think. Calling someone mad, an idiot, talking about tribunals. And in the Netherlands specifically, there's recently been a lot of debate on the manners politicians use. There's actually been a parliamentary debate about it as well. So something's going on there, and a lot of people are worried that there's this incivility crisis. There's really a problem here. And that's because there's this violation of social norms by politicians, and that has bad effects. So lower trust, for instance, although that's been disputed a little, a lower legitimacy of the opponent, and just a general worry that people tune out of politics. On the upside, there's also the idea that incivility can bring something to the table, really grab people's attention, make politics a little less boring, and actually make them tune in a bit more, just to reach people that are hard to reach with political communication. So that's something that some people have been calling a paradox. On the one hand, people respond negatively to incivility, and on the other hand, they are kind of drawn to it. And some incivility scholars have been looking more and more to emotional responses to incivility, to sort of unpack what's going on there and to better understand the effects. Because as famously been said by Mats, is that people have a visceral or gut level reaction to violation of social norms. So incivility is understood to be. People who have been looking at emotional responses to this find some negative things, such as increased anger and disgust, but a bit in line with the paradox, also positive, so amusement, entertainment, enthusiasm. This ties in with a bit of a debate about how normatively desirable it is. Politicians are uncivil and rude. So some people say it's not done, it's a norm violation, it sets a bad example. Other people say it can have some positive sides, also because it's a good tool for people who seek dramatic social change. So for instance, for marginalized groups or people whose voices are not heard as much, it could actually be a good thing. So we want to take a bit of a closer look at these affective responses, because these existing findings on emotional responses to uncivil politicians are usually based on self-reports. And those of you who have seen Gijs' presentation last week know that self-reports are great, but there's other things we can do. They're a bit of a end product, I think you called it, of a cognitive process. A little exception here is Diana Mats, of course, again, who has some findings on incivility spurring arousal, but that doesn't tell us much on the direction. So we don't know whether it's a positive or a negative reaction. So we kind of want to tap into that and see, what's happening on a more we ask, okay, how do citizens respond effectively to uncivil politicians? I want to go back to basics a little bit here with a lab experiment where we just want to see, okay, what people respond if we expose them to textual political instability, so politicians being uncivil in this case, versus, first on a political baseline, we're also a bit interested in what happens when politicians are explicitly civil. And we're also want to look in sort of the second round of partisanship of the politicians that's being uncivil, because we know that usually matters quite a bit. So look at people's most and least like party politicians. We want to use FEMG measures, and the people who have been at the Hot Politics Lab a bit longer than me are way better at explaining this, but we actually want to look at 3 different facial muscles and measure the activity that we're not able to see with the bare eye often. Mostly look at the frowning muscle, the corrugator, the zygomaticus, which is more of a smile response, and the muscle connected to disgust. And also we want to include self-reports and skin conductance to take a look at the connection between things. So what kind of incivility? There's a lot of versions of incivility. We want to look at the violation of sort of interpersonal norms. So not what sometimes is called intolerance, which is really very anti-democratic intolerance, things like homophobia or sexism, but really sort of interpersonal faux pas. And to create some diversity, we thought we choose person and policy directed in politeness, because you can be impolite to someone by really attacking them as a person, or in a political sense attacking their policy. So what would that look like? And you would even either if you are or your plans are, and then you can say very arrogant, an absolute disgrace, or an idiot, or your plans are idiotic. And then just to give an idea, you can also be explicitly polite, of course, and that would look like you're very wise, you're quite sensible, you're a good politician, or you're a good policy. So that's sort of the idea of what we're thinking of, we're working with. Ask some pre-treatment questions, including conflict avoidance and most and least like party. And then just to give you an idea of what this would look like, we're building on the work of, I think it's Jos van Berkem and others who are in the linguistic corner and really want to work on like a sentence level. So in the first round, the idea is that, okay, they will see like an introduction, okay, you'll see some descriptions of people making statements, will be shown in pieces, and in the end, you'll see the full picture. So then, yes, based on those people. So we start with a neutral baseline, so just get an idea of what people's baseline face looks like, basically. And then we start a politician. This would be the political baseline. This is what we want to compare. So it's just people's general response to reading the word a politician or the phrase. And politician says to an opponent during an election debate, this is the context. We're not set on this, so we can also change this around, maybe take it away, not sure, but it matters, of course, whether a politician is rude to someone in the hallway or during a debate. They say during an election debate, you are absolutely insane. That's where the incivility kicks in, so this is where we would measure the facial response to incivility. And then they read the full thing. So a politician says to an opponent during an election debate, you're absolutely insane. Then in the second round, because of course that was neutral, we were more interested in what's actually who is being uncivil. Is it someone from a party you like or someone from a party you don't like? So it's the same with neutral baseline, a politician, and then the party cue. So suppose you very much like the VVD, and this will be from your in-group. So a politician from your in-group says to an opponent during an election debate, you are a complete failure. And then there's the incivility here. That's kind of what that would look like. For the first round, we're interested mainly in the political baseline and the incivilities, what's happening there. For the second round, we'll be interested in, first of all, how people respond to the mention their in party, and then what incivility does to them, what incivility adds or subtracts for that, and what the out party, and the difference there. It's the difference between what incivility does. So this is sort of the idea in a nutshell. Before I round up, I want to mention the Politicologen. Now, there's a political science conference 2 days in Leuven in June. There's a really cool list of workshops. Particularly this one, and I'm organized with Sjors Overman from the University of Utrecht. Barbara Hus will be there. Will be really cool. Please also submit your abstracts by 28th March. That's it.
Thank you, Emma, for this unexpected end.
Oh, yes, I was talking, and then I realized, oh wait, this is the end. Does Daniel go immediately after?
No. We first have 10 minutes of question time for Emma. So those of you who are new here, if you want to ask a question, also online. Online, you can type your question into the Q&A box or FNA box. If your Zoom settings are in German, as they are here, you can see we're transitioning towards a new support team. What language will your? Yeah, but this yeah.
English.
Oh, English. Okay. Of course, if you're in the room, just raise your hand, and I'll give you the floor. Okay. So, who has a question for? Haley.
Thanks for this really cool presentation. I really like this project. It's very interesting, and I did have to laugh at the examples. They made me giggle, so thank you. One thing I'm a bit confused by, because you mentioned, and I wrote down here, you mentioned at one point during the talk that you wanted to also look at politicians being explicitly civil.
Yeah.
And I immediately wrote down what is explicitly civil, and then later with these examples, like, you're a good politician, you have a good policy. I mean, it didn't come back in talking about the incivility in group and out group, and I don't know if this is really what you plan to do, but I was just thinking that if you had an in or out group politician, like, that was particularly, well, if you like a particular party that's particularly well known for being incivil, like, would they actually ever be explicitly civil? Is that something that a respondent would believe? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. And I'm kind of curious about what will happen in this regard as well, because we wanted to include it as sort of really the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that maybe, because it's just textual, right? Maybe they'll come across as sarcasm even.
Yeah, like in the sense of, I mean, if, like, let's say Donald Trump is your favorite person, and when, as I say, a Republican politician says you have a good policy, but you immediately associated Trump with that image of a politician, it would be very strange. It would indeed, it would sound sarcastic.
Yeah, maybe. Which is something
I don't know.
some people could tell. Yeah. We've actually been thinking about how this would work, what we would expect here, because you can imagine you actually not liking your input politician to be friendly to an opponent.
True.
So yeah, I'm not sure. We would have to think about this some more, but it's
Yeah, I don't really have a question, but to add on that, I can remember moments where, for example, in the debate between Trump and Hillary, where I think they were asked to say something positive about each other.
really?
So there are moments.
of course.
And I can also remember, for example, within Dutch Parliament, when Alexander Pechtold left from the more central party, that leader of Party for Freedom, Geert Wilders. Then they break the game, right? And then they say something positive to say goodbye.
And sometimes we use it strategically as well, because now that you're talking of examples, there's this classic example of, I think, Klaas Dijkhoff, VVD, in an election debate, and it was the first debate ever that Populist was part of. It was like a televised election debate, and then Dijkhoff still had this sort of challenge opportunity. You could push a button and challenge someone to a debate, and he used that, and I was like, yeah, it's the last one of today, and we've been over exaggerating differences today, so in good spirits, and because you're a newcomer, I give you the last word. And some people were like, oh my god, what are you doing? You're just like using it strategically, and other people really liked it. So sometimes it does happen. Yeah.
Well, thank you for these rare examples of politeness. Back.
What catch my attention is because there's like negative criticism, but whether it's civil or not, it's a difference.
Yes.
Have you considered putting criticism that it's not uncivil as a baseline to compare? For example, one of the examples is your complete failure, right? But if a politician says, "Oh, during your government, the housing policy was a complete failure," that wouldn't be necessarily uncivil, and wouldn't that be an interesting baseline also to launch that?
Yeah, to basically look at how uncivil something is before. We would need to pretest these to begin with, and we also know that not everyone thinks the same things are super uncivil, especially with policy. Sometimes it's just accurate. Like, but sometimes when something's a failure, it's a failure. So that's an interesting suggestion. Yeah.
Along those lines, Isabella Roboto online, she also asks you, we know that people also respond to negativity, so shouldn't the baseline be a negative message and a treatment, and then negativity plus incivility? So I think this is
so not just check for like a political baseline, but also for a sense of negativity.
Yeah.
That's a good question, because indeed, negative is not always uncivil, but it does provoke something. So maybe we can play around with that. Need to think about that. But yeah, it's a good question.
Christian, then Malte.
Did I understand it correct that you plan to split it between personal incivility and policy addressed incivility?
Yeah, that's what
And
we thought.
if yes, what are your expectations there?
I would expect that personal would get some more response, a more intense response, maybe a bit more negative as well, because attacking someone on policy would, I think, in general, be a little less of a norm violation as well.
Have a follow-up question?
We don't do two fingers. Now go.
I was wondering how we can really separate these two things. Doesn't the concept of incivility always include some kind of personal
It depends on what concept you use.
attack?
Yeah.
So if you say something policy idiotic, this is not focused only on the policy, right? Because using the word idiotic, you implicitly say an idiot has implemented this policy. Whereas come up
I
with
know
this
a lot of
policy,
people are
there's
not
only
idiots,
idiots
they
who
do
come up with an
idiotics.
idiotic policy. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it depends, but I still think in phrasing, because we mostly thought, oh, it's good to have some variety in the phrasing and in the level of how close to a person it is.
Hmm.
But it's not a strict distinction. I think you're right in that. But there's idiots who do non-idiotic things and the other way around, so.
Malte.
Yeah, do you think the manipulation will elicit a strong emotional response?
Yeah.
Because now when I read, or I can imagine that if a participant sits in the lab and reads just a sentence, I'm not sure how strong the facial response to that will be. They will really like start more than just like slight variation.
Yeah, the good thing is that the slight variation, and you have more experience with this type of measurement, that you can catch that, right?
Yeah.
Especially the very little activations of muscle.
Exactly, yeah, that's the idea why facial imagery is more beneficial than, for example, these facial algorithms, because it's not visible, but it's detectable attention in the muscle. And we had in the lab, for example, where it's like friendly, depression, COVID, so positive and negative, and they still understood.
And it also matches the.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, we don't want people to have strong responses in the lab because that would mean it would rip off the electrodes and break our computers. I mean, this is of course all very relative.
I mean, you can see how extreme we can go, but.
Otherwise, I would suggested to use just more extreme use, right? But maybe that's not very ecologically valid.
Yeah, of course, it's not majorly ecologically balanced to have these like weird sentence words. It's a nice difference. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a relevant thought. I'm just gonna put it out there as per usual. But I was just thinking about your manipulation as well. From what I recall with this seeing is that you have it as like a politician says blah. So you have it like the sender of the message, the person doing the incivility level. Is there a reason that you don't have a target of the incivility?
Yeah.
Like, so a politician says to another politician.
Yeah, to an opponent, it just has. So
Yeah.
depending on the politician, but we didn't include the specific label. So we're not saying, oh, they're like main opponent or another point of view in there. We could do that. Introduce like another layer to it. But for now we thought, oh, let's keep it a bit simple, but it would be interesting to see, oh, I like it when my in-party politician is sort of rude to at least like party, but when they do it to a party that's close to me, for instance.
Exactly, or somebody else in our own party, well, maybe they would do, again, that's probably.
That would be,
But do you know what I
that would be
mean? Like,
interesting to see what's happening then, but yeah. Yeah. That's,
Okay, Matthijs has a question, then I have a comment, and then we quickly go to the next video.
Thanks. I was wondering, when we were talking about incivility, it was about politicians, and also your hypothesis was about politicians, right?
yeah,
And you mentioned a VVD politician, but you don't mention the politician.
we don't say.
And you probably have a good reason for that, but I was also wondering, probably also related to your point, the reactions will probably be more strong if people see a politician that they connect to that party. So for instance, if people would see Mark Rutte there as well, a picture of him, and here is, read his name maybe. So could you also do that, include that? Or is there a very good reason why you don't do it?
Yeah, now we keep it quite sort of controlled and really look at, okay, incivility in a political situation and not in like specific political situation or with a specific leader. We could, of course, add a third round where we add like faces and make it more specific. So really, okay, let's really build this up from the ground and start very general and then make it a bit more specific. But I get that, of course, it evokes more of a reaction. It's also a bit more realistic if you see a face and have a name, someone you know, and you know their communication style. But that might also bring some noise if it's
absolutely.
particular style.
But it is, I mean, just reading a VVD politician.
Yeah.
If I would read, for me, Forum for Democracy is the furthest away, I think. If I read a FPD politician, has a very different, I have a different response than when I read Thierry Baudet, for instance. I see.
Otherwise you see Pepijn van Houweling, it's instant.
There was a question online that I missed from Carmen van Alenbeek. How do you deal with non-voters?
How do we deal with non-voters? I think we talked about most and least like party. So I guess still if you don't vote, you still may have a party.
We have 16 parties. If you don't like any of them.
If you don't like, or if you have no ordering in them, then the question is a bit like, why did you
come to
the study? Which would be an interesting demographic for people who, but yeah, I'm not sure. Have you had that a lot? Because you check for it.
I think we never explicitly, we always explicitly asked least and most parties, so we never explicitly asked whether they were not going to vote at all.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to at least have some sort of measure of people's level of political cynicism, for instance, to sort of capture that particular group.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll keep my suggestions for the post lab meeting time, because we are quickly going further with Daniel Thiele. Bert, will you introduce?
Sure, yeah. Okay, great. Next, thanks, Emma. Next speaker is Daniel Thiele, who was a visiting PhD student at the Hot Politics Lab this fall. Daniel does work on populist communication on social media, published a really interesting paper recently in Media and Communications. He is wrapping up his PhD at the University of Vienna and is currently at the Weissenbaum Institute that is affiliated with the University of It is in Berlin, right? And a university affiliate with the Free University in Berlin or the other. Right, I got it right. Okay, Daniel, this was a long overdue presentation, which was supposed to happen during your visit here, but we're still happy that you're willing to join today to share some of your exciting work with us. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Bert, for the introduction. I'm sharing the screen here. I hope this works. Okay. Do you see that? Do you see an angry man? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, as Bert said, I'm currently wrapping up my PhD, and that's why also the slides are still University of Vienna. And this is part of my, so it's the third PhD paper, and it's on populist user comments, the COVID pandemic, and online publics. And yeah, I'm using computational text analysis methods here. And to give you a little primer about what sort of feedback would be great. So I'm continuing kind of this tradition to present work to you that is already quite developed and in a R&R state, so I'm sorry for doing that, but at the moment I don't have any fresh papers to present. So, but still useful would be to get feedback from you, maybe also for like how to frame that in my PhD. So regarding the bigger picture or so, sometimes I tend to miss that when being focused on the analysis stuff. And also because like this time, review 3 suggested redoing the models in a Bayesian way. So I did that. And if you spot any things where you think I got it wrong, please raise your voice. So to give you some information about the context of the paper. So it's, yeah, I mean, you know, the COVID pandemic is kind of over now, but it has, yeah, stirred protests with varying intensity all over Europe, and a lot of this anti-COVID measure protests share a lot of similarities with populist ideology. So it's anti-elitist and it favors a common sense over expert knowledge. And yeah, social media was important for both this type of protests, but also in general for populists. So it's quite a important communication channel for populists. However, I think there are at least two research gaps. So regarding populist communication research, a lot of research has been done on communication of politicians or the media, but a few studies looked into communication generated by regular users. So that's what I'm doing. And I think we are still missing some insights about the context factors that shape such user-generated populist content. And I think great would also be like comparative studies regarding the COVID crisis and political discontent. So there's something some cross-country studies that focus on attitudes or offline behavior, but very little done on online behavior or this type of online behavior. I had a successor study which does something similar, but that focused on Germany and Austria only. So my research question is, how did the COVID crisis affect populist user comments on news media pages on Facebook in 7 Western European countries? Regarding the theory, I'm using the concept of Haasmüde, which is pure people versus corrupt elite plus popular sovereignty. I think I really don't have to explain that to you. And I'm following a communication-centered approach, so I regard user comments as expression of populist ideas. I analyze like different types of factors. So one set is more COVID-19 specific. So here my argument would be to regard populist user comments as an expression of psychological reactance, which has been introduced in the 60s by Brehm as the motivation to restore freedoms when they are restricted. And I think that is likely what happened in the COVID pandemic. So when people are not able to restore the freedoms, some of them get aggressive and derogate the source of the restriction. And it's further triggered when people think to be like part of a persuasive campaign, and also by repetitious messages. And I think it's reasonable to assume that all this kind of happened in the COVID context. The second part of factors looks into more general factors that might drive populist user generated communication. So I think that mentioning elite actors might drive that because yeah, populism builds heavily on attributing blame towards elites like government actors or scientific experts, for example. And regarding the media type, so in which kind of online public would we expect populist user comments? Yeah, one could argue that tabloid press coverage is more populist and also preferred by populist citizens. So one could expect also to find more populist user comments there. But yeah, so I formulated that as a hypothesis. So regarding the content of the post, I would expect that mentioning COVID or restrictions is positively associated with populism in user comments. I would expect, so this is the repetitious part, I would expect that populism in user comments increased over time through the crisis. I also would expect that government stringency of COVID measures, so how strict those COVID restrictions are at the moment, would trigger populism in user comments. And I raised this as a research question. How did that play out in the different countries? And yeah, I would expect like mentioning government actors and experts would also increase the level of populism. And I posed the media type question as the research question. Yeah. So I use data collected via the Facebook Graph API and FacePager and R from 7 Western European countries, and I looked into news media Facebook pages, 3 per country, featuring quality tabloid and public broadcaster media. And overall, I collected throughout the first 3 waves of COVID, 65,000 posts and 3.4 million user comments. And here you see, so I used the government COVID response tracker, the Oxford COVID response tracker. Here you see the various levels of COVID stringency over the countries, and it varies a lot actually. So the red parts are where government measures were above the median, the population median, and you see like in Italy it was most of the time quite strict, whereas in Sweden it was most of the time under this level. And the black line, it's the incidence rate. So you see the 3 waves. Okay, to measure populism in user comments, I used my DictVector R package, which implements a method called distributed dictionary representation, which works like this. You set up a small dictionary that represents your concept and represent that in a word embedding model as an average vector. And you do the same for each document that you're interested in. This here, you represent each comment as a vector, and then you measure the Gaussian similarity between those vectors, which gives you a continuous measurement. I validated this to bring all comments on the same page and to make this kind of comparable across those 7 countries. I translated all non-German speaking comments into German using machine translation. This was more or less economic choice because German was the biggest share of this data set. And yeah, I validated this and optimized that against a hand-coded sample coded by native speakers. And it works well, but it doesn't work perfectly in equally in all countries. So one might be afraid that we have measurement error or differential to the language. So what I did here to account for that is I centered that on the country mean and standardized it. I used self-made dictionaries to capture topics in posts and validated those as well. And yeah, I aggregated then the comment level measures on post level to keep the number of observations at a more reasonable number, which is also important for running Bayesian models, which takes ages. Yeah, and I centered that on country mean, as I said. Yes. And yeah, stringency and incidence rate, I used a 14-day lag. Here are first descriptive findings when plotting the level of populism over the different media pages. Surprisingly, we see like the color is the media type, like red is tabloid press. Surprisingly, we see the lowest levels of populism in Facebook pages of tabloid press. And the good thing in this plot is we see no clear, so it's not clearly driven by country. So this speaks for the measurement, I would say. but rather by the media type. And surprisingly, though, is public broadcasters have the highest level of populism here. Okay, I ran, here I present two Bayesian multi-level linear regression models. I implemented that as Bayesian models because, this was kind of the wish of reviewer 3, but also because it's a non-representative, non-random sample, and we have few clusters on the highest level. So arguably, Bayesian models are more appropriate for that. And I accounted for the Facebook page level and for country level. So two random levels. In model 1, I only fitted random intercepts, whereas in model 2, I allowed for stringency to have random slopes over country level. And regarding the random part down there, we see like there's almost no variance on the country level, which is less surprising because I centered that on a country level, right? But okay, let's move on to the plot of the fixed effects of model 1, which is here. So it's sorted by effect strength, and it gives you the posterior distributions of the possible parameter estimate values. So which can be interpreted like if you start here down here by the negative effect of tabloid. So taking the orange part here tells us that there's a 95% chance that being a post on a tabloid press page decreases the level of populism in user comments from 0.5 to 0.13 or so. So that's the interpretation of that. And we see, speaking towards the general effects, are like the government and experts increased the level of populism. Tabloid decreased that. And regarding the COVID specific effects, we see that mentioning the COVID-19 and restrictions had the expected positive effect, whereas stringency has a positive effect, but this is very weak, actually, very small. What else? Did I forget something? And over time, so we see a clear negative effect of the first wave. So in the first wave, this was much smaller. Okay. And but so let's have a look at the stringency over countries. And here we see that
You didn't hear.
Yeah, but this also muted.
Yeah, but that's just the display. The audios.
Oh, Daniel, did you hear me or not?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, now, okay. Yeah, I was telling you that you're running out of time. So.
Okay. I will wrap up. So the point is, stringency only has in Germany positive effect, and I will conclude now. So Germany is kind of special, apparently. But we saw more general, like elite actors triggered populism in comments, and tabloid press had a surprisingly negative effect. And I think like future research might look into this, like explaining what actually went wrong in Germany, but also I think while keeping in mind that these measurements might have also, they are not perfect, and this might play into that as well. Okay, thanks for your attention. I'm looking forward to receive your comments.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. And over to questions. Christian.
This is again more of a comment than a question, sorry, but I don't think it's very surprising that public broadcasters have the highest level of populism. Because from my experience reading also comments on public broadcasters on Facebook, many of these comments are seeing that outlet as the outlet of the elite.
Yeah, the government.
Of the government, right? So a typical comment is criticizing the outlet for being just the loudspeaker of the government. Whereas when I think of Austrian and German tabloid press, which is very often very critical and very uncivil critical of the government, which is more in line than with people who would like to express this populist comments. So I don't think this is very surprising. What are your thoughts on this?
Very good. Very good.
Thank you, Christian. I would totally agree with you. I think like they are just attracted towards those people that they don't like, kind of, and try to annoy this publics that which they see as representative of the state, basically. And but yeah, in the literature, I think like most of the time populism is more strongly associated with tabloid press. So I found that an interesting finding, actually. But yeah, it makes sense.
I just wanted to kind of add to what Christian was saying, because I have the same thoughts. But like at the same time, there was all this kind of anti-NOS campaign going on. The BBC is fake news, etc., etc. And I mean, I would see it that people are. This is just me, thinking along a bit, but isn't it just that these people are jumping onto these Facebook pages to add comments to discredit the messages that are being broadcast by these perceived mouthpiece of the state type broadcasters? I don't know, maybe that is thing.
No, yeah, I actually agree. Yeah, so
okay.
So yeah.
Cool. Sorry.
There's a question online by Tobias Rohrbach, who is extremely modest by writing, "I'm familiar but not an expert with Bayesian models." It's true. He's an expert in Bayesian models, and he says your analysis seems fine. Well, however, I'm wondering how you justify your flat priors. I was thinking exactly that. He writes, since you do have a priori expectations, have you had the chance to look at how sensitive your results are to prior specifications? As a reviewer, I would be looking for that info.
Yeah, thanks for that remark. So well, I did not actually use flat priors, but like uninformative, normal distributed priors, and they because I also have a rather large sample that the priors actually did not influence the findings too much from what I could tell there. But no, I took a I tried to be to wrap my head very quickly around the Bayesian model, so I did not dive too deeply into setting informative priors. So yeah. Okay. But if you have any suggestions how to actually do that, I also that was something I was struggling with. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Oh, there's a question from Malte.
Yeah, so maybe it's also, I have one question, one comment about the priors. So I think in a review, you could defend that because there's several perspectives on how to use priors in the Bayesian analysis. Some people say, okay, this is really a subjective expectation. Okay, if you expect a strong effect a priori, then you can specify a prior accordingly. And other statisticians see this more as a sort of way to constrain your analyses, and having a non-informative prior as you used it, that perspective is quite defensible, I would say, because you try not to bias your analyses anyway, but still you want to restrict your estimates in a certain way. And I think this is fine. If you want to argue in that perspective, at least. And so I was wondering about your measurement of populism. So you used fast text to encode the comments and to encode the dictionary, and then you sort of computed a similarity matrix or something, or a similarity measure. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So you get, so you represent each document and your one dictionary as a vector, and then you measure the similarity between those two vectors and take this cosine similarity directly as a measurement. So this is quite it's simplistic, I would say, but yeah, this is what this DDR method suggested, and it works. Apparently, it works okay. And the nice thing with it, or what I liked, is that you can see this dictionary, which gives you also, if you're not too familiar with machine learning approaches, so it gives you an idea about what actually is represented there in your concept.
So you basically encoded the entire dictionary as one single vector then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So as an average vector of all words in the dictionary.
Okay. Thanks.
There's time for one more small question.
Yeah. I was wondering, I like your measure with the dictionary, right? Of course, has a problem because populism is often conceived as having two dimensions: people-centrism, anti-elitism, and here you have a lot of anti-elitism and a little bit of populism, a little bit of people-centrism. What if you distinguish the two and only focus on anti-elitism and maybe then separately on people-centrism? And what if you, for instance, say that a post has to be both people-centrist and anti-elitist, etc.? What happens then? Then you have a more restrictive measure of populism. Have you checked that?
Yes. So our hand coding actually included, or it coded separately anti-elitism and people-centrism. And first, I also tried to optimize sets of words separately for those two different dimensions. However, I think the decision to collapse them into one in the end was that I think it was for probably for people-centricity that it did not work properly on its own. So it worked better if we were collapsing the two. So this kind of speaks into it's somehow difficult to interpret that, but I think it kind of represents like something that includes both these dimensions or so. Does that make sense? So yeah, because if you would only have like these very anti-elitist words, then this could also be too close to just government critique or so, like incumbent critique or so. But if you have this people-centric appeal, but it's a bit difficult to keep things apart with this method, which actually it irons over a lot of differences there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We've talked about zygomaticus, cosine similarities. We've had so much fun today. Thank you very much, Daniel and Emma, for presenting your work. It was a real pleasure. I think both of you have hot Politics Lab coffee mugs? No.
No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
Really?
For Daniel.
No, I think you threw your one on the ground, didn't you?
No, I swear.
Okay, so
We will send you one.
I will send you one. I'm sorry. I thought I'd given yours. Okay, that's fine. We have plenty. Well, a few. Thanks a lot, everyone, for participating. It's been real fun. I want to end with further thanking our sponsors, of course. And, yeah, I didn't forget it. The Hub, the ERC, NWO, the Marie Curie Training Scheme. Who am I forgetting? The Association for Politics and Life Sciences, and a lot of other people.
Faculty of Social and Behavioral Sciences.
Oh yeah, our faculty. Yeah. Then the remaining schedule for the next weeks is that we don't have a meeting next week, and not the week after that. We reconvene on March 17 with a talk by Barbara Vis from Utrecht University. At this stage, I see that the talk is titled TBA, which, so yeah, to be announced. Then the week after that, we have another Graduate Friday like we have today, with this time Lina Wietkerijts, you are, and Sanne van Oosten. And there's the talk, Lina's talk is called Beyond Lügenpresse. How politicians criticize and delegitimize the media. Oh, that's a tongue breaker. And then Sanne van Oosten's talk is called What do my minority and majority voters care about more? Shared identity or ideology? The week after that, my colleague Rosa Sanchez Salgado will present with a sociological perspective on emotions. And April 14, we have David Amodio. I give a talk on human sources of algorithmic bias. And April 21, we have Anke Munnigsma, with also a to be announced title talk. And we have more meetings in May, but you know, that's so far ahead of the part of us. I'm pretty sure that you'll find plenty of us later today in Kea Bar if you want to continue the conversation or talk about something completely different, of course. It's been great having you today here, and I hope to see you the next few weeks.
See you later.
Thanks for having me.